for you guys to do at all, but it's mainly just for you to practice what we do in class, practice with these Python concepts, and it's totally up to you whether you want to do it and gain more from this class. So this homework was to create a recipe and then change those variables with all the different amounts to based on what we said in the instructions. So first have your recipe and then multiply it by 3 after you get more groceries and all that. So I'll show you guys how I did it. So I have 6 variables up here that I created, one for each ingredient in my fruit smoothie, blueberries, apples, bananas, and then each has a different amount. So if you can see, this amount here is equal to 5, so that would just be an integer. And then this value here is 2.5, so that would be a float. So remember, integers are numbers that don't have decimals on it, and then floats are numbers with decimals or fractions or anything like that. So now if I were, I print out, this is how you make a fruit smoothie. And then I have these different variables inside my strings, inside my print statements. So and then I'm casting my amount to a string so that I'm able to print it with the rest of my strings. Because if I were to not include this, Python would throw me an error saying that this is an integer, I can't read this in my print statement. So you always want to make sure that if you have a number like this, you are printing out with the str, casting it to a string.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I did it in a different way where like I did quotes and then I assigned different values and then I used the purple brackets. Is that fine too?
Yeah, this is completely fine. So yeah, so what he's talking about is, for example, if you have print, put, and then I say this.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is completely fine. This is another way to do it, which we learned last class. And you say dot format amount 1, ingredient 1. So yeah, this is the same thing. So what this does basically is take this variable and put it to whatever, to put it to this place, and then the next variable into this place. So whatever order that you order your brackets in, it'll put those variables in your format over here. So if you have more questions about all of these concepts, check out the video from last week if you were not here. And they'll be able to answer all your questions on printing, putting variables in print statements and all that. So what I did here was I used this divided equals to. So I remember last class we learned, for example, if you have a variable like this and you want to add 1 to it. So this is one way that you can add. So the same thing would apply to multiplication, division, and subtraction. So for multiplication, you have plus equals, subtraction, you have minus equals, multiplication, you have this, and division is like this. So what we did here was we divided each amount by 2, and then printed that out again, and then multiplied it by 3 one more time after in the instructions we said to triple the recipe, and then printed that out. So this is 3 halves technically, and then this would be half. So now I can show you guys what would happen if I were to run this program. And you see all my print statements come out here. I'll make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see. And yeah, so any other questions on the homework? Or if you guys want, so I saw one person message me on Slack before the class. So if you want me to personally review your homework, so feel free to message me on Slack so that I can review your homework if you guys want me to. Oh, so you guys cannot see. So let me fix this real quick. Are you guys able to see my screen now with the output?
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Can you use commas instead of the pluses, like when you print like?
Yeah, you can do that as well. Are you guys able to see my output now with terminal? Okay.
Yes.
Cool. So now we'll go into the class material. So if there are no further questions on homework, we'll start out with this. So last class we learned you can name your variables. So I'll do similar to what I did yesterday in the Java class. I have my age, which is 19. And then, so one thing that I talked about, if you guys were here for the Java class, you remember this, I said, use camel casing to name your variables. There's different styles in different languages on how you can name your variables. So in Python, the Oh yeah. So I can post the homework solutions on a TinyURL link as well. We have a GitHub set up for each of our classes, Java, Python, web design. So I'll share the GitHub link with everyone that includes the homework solutions and the Python files that we create in class. So any coding that we do in class will also be online for you to reference in case you want to go back and review that. So going back to this, if you want to name your variables, so this is a simple, but if you were to have multiple words in your variables, so like my age like this, so in Python, the best way to do this would be through an underscore. So this is not required at all, but this is basically just the best way to name your variables to make everything really clear. So like your age like this, so that everything's clear and separated by different by underscores in this case. So it's just a clear way of seeing your variables. Yes, Python is also I want to say yes, it is case sensitive. I'll check with that again, and I can I'll review that and say that again. So for now, yeah, I say it is case sensitive. So I'll create two variables here. And as I was saying earlier, you can do A times equals B like that. And then this would give me the value of A being to 15 because I'm taking value of 5, multiplying that by 3. So A times B, and then that gives me the new value of A to 15. So I can just quickly do that. Yeah, so we have 15 here. And so now I'll go into a couple of other operations that you can use. So I see someone privately messaging me about terminal, so I can answer questions about those after class if you're not able to get it running on your computer. The setup and instructions are online, so if you didn't check that out first. So now I'll reassign these values back to 5 and 3. And one thing that I'll say it's 5 and 2 actually. So one thing that you can do is print out something like this. So if I were to run this, you see I get 25 on the output. So when I have two, so this is the multiplication symbol. If I have two of those in a row, what this does is it takes A as 5, B as 2. And it says I want to do 5 to the power of 2. So 5 squared essentially. And that would be 25. And I can do this with any numbers. So instead of using variables, I can do the same thing with putting numbers inside my print statement and printing that out. And then I get 128 because 2 to the power of 7 would be 128. So this is just another way that you can do it. So instead of doing like, for example, like 2 times 2 times 2, like all that, this is just a simple way to just do it quickly with 2. If you have 7 2s, you want to multiply them.
Wait, why are you doing, is it like basically A squared times B?
It's A to the power of B. That's what it is.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah. And so a couple of other operations that you can do. I'll reassign A and B one more time. And what we have here is as I explained last class, when you multiply, so these are considered integers. When you multiply integers, you'll get an integer as an output, but when you divide integers, you will get a float as an output. So if you see, so I'll comment this out for now. If you see that I divide this, I get a long number 3.333 like that. So one thing that I can do is do a double division like that. And what this does is just give me the output, excluding the remainder. So what it will do is it'll take 10 divided by 3, but I want to ignore that remainder of 1 and just return what the actual value is, the full number.
Cool.
And one more operation that we didn't get to last time in Python is this percent symbol. So this percent symbol is called modulus. It's called a modulus. So what this does is it will take these two numbers, 10 and 3, and return whatever the remainder is of that. So if I take 10 divided by 3, I get 3 with the remainder of 1. 10 divided by 3, I get a remainder of 1. 3 with the remainder of 1. And then, so if you see all three of these print statements execute one after another, you see I get 3.333, 3, and then 1. So yes, so you can take a square root in Python. So there's another thing that we'll get into in the future, which is you can import the math, which is sort of like a library that you can use, and it has all these operations: square root, absolute value, squaring with power. Like you can use powers like 5 to the power of 3 without having to do all this.
Mhm.
So I see someone is saying a times b equals 100, not 25. So just make sure that the values of a and b are 5 and 2, and then when you execute it like this, you should get 25.
Wait,
So are there
can
any
you please
questions
run?
right now?
Can you please run a percentage b again?
Yeah. So right here is what happens when I run it.
What does this do when it's not functioned?
You have to program it some way. You can put it on the table way easier than sitting on your lap.
Any other questions on that? I'll move on. Okay, so now if we have a simple, let's say I want to go out for dinner. So I have a meal with some of my friends, and let's say the price comes out to be 100.50, like that. So the tax in California, I think, is around this for food. So that would be my tax price. So one thing that I can do to calculate my tax price would be, I can say my tax price is equal to the price, the total price of my meal times the tax value. So I can just print out tax price real quick. And I get this ugly number, but that's essentially what the value of my price will be. Tax price, sorry. So now if I want to get the total price of my meal, I can say the price without tax, which is over here, plus my tax price. And then I can print out my total price now. So now you see I have this number 107.78625, but obviously there's no 625. I can't pay 0.006 of a cent in dollars or with coins or anything. So I just want to I want to round this number to 107.79, right? So one function that you can use is I can just say print out rounding my total price to 2. So this is basically saying I want to round this number, whatever is this value, and I want to round it to 2 decimals. And I can print that out, and then I see I get 107.79. So that's a cleaner number that shows exactly what my price would be. So this is just a convenient function you can use when you have a lot of decimals and you want to round it to a certain amount in your program. Any questions on that? So if you want to round to a whole number, so you can 0. So this will just basically do 0.0. But as I was saying earlier, there's the math library that you can use, which we'll learn later in this course, that will allow you to round to basically chop off all those decimal places. And there's a lot of different tools that you can use with that math module, and we'll get into that in the future.
Wait, so does the 0 indicate what place it rounds to?
So this would indicate how many decimal places. So you see here, when I did 2,
okay. So
here.
0 would be to round it to the nearest whole number then.
Yeah, basically. So like it would get that kind of output.
Also, I had one question about something above. Right.
Yeah.
If you do A divided by B, what does that do?
So what that does, so this is kind of hard to read, but basically I'm saying 10 divided by 3 is equal to 3 with the remainder of 1, right?
Uh-huh.
So if I were to do A divided by B, that gives me that crazy number 3.3333. But if I were to do A double, then it will just give me this 3 value.
Okay, so
rather than all of that. Yeah, and then if I were to do this modulus, then it'll give me that 1.
Okay.
So another thing that you can do, if you have Python installed on your computer and you're able to run this through command line right now, you can follow along with me. But if not, if you don't have everything installed, that's fine. So one thing I can do is I can type Python 3 into my command line, and it opens up this whole thing here. So what this allows me to do is I can just run Python code right away without having to do all this through the command line. But the only problem is I can't really save it anywhere. But I can, while this is open, everything is saved. So first I can just say print hello, like that. It'll print out whatever I want to me, and I can say A is equal to 3. I can say A, and that'll print out A. So you don't also need to include this entire print thing when you're working in this shell right here. So you can also just say Python is fun, and it'll just print that out for me. And something that's actually pretty convenient is I can say print underscore and then close my parentheses like that. So what this basically does is underscore, what that means is it will just take whatever was printed previously in the previous line, it will take that and substitute it for whatever the underscore is. So I have it like that. So we'll say print out Python is fun again. Yeah, I can make this bigger. So I'll take this same problem that we had over here, and I'll say my price again is equal to here, and tax is equal to this. So, and then I can say I want to see what the value of my price times my taxes. And I get this number, and then I can say I want my price to add to the previous value. So this is basically the same thing that we're doing over here. We're saying total price is equal to price plus tax price, but instead of having to create all these different variables, I can use this underscore to access the last value. So the new price will be 100.5 plus 7.2, and I'll get that same number again. And then I can use the round function to round it to 2 decimals, and I can use the underscore to get that same value one more time, and then I get the same output. So this is just like convenience. It's you can use this to play around. Like when I first got into Python, I'd play around and see what commands work, what doesn't work, how to use Python well. Like this is pretty convenient just to play around and just learning the language in general.
What is that window that you opened that you just typed on?
Yeah, so I just went on my command line. I have terminal on my Mac, and I just typed Python 3 into terminal as my command, and then it opened up all of this for me.
Is terminal like a coding thing?
So do you have a Mac or Windows?
I have a PC, yeah.
Oh yeah, so then I'm not exactly sure if it's already installed, but if you want to learn how to do all this, just talk to me after class and I can figure it out with you.
Okay, I'm just using REPL.it, so.
Yeah, so that's okay for now. That should work completely fine.
Okay, so do I just write all that in the code?
You don't need to write any of this right now. This was just
There's
a
a compiler window in REPL.it. Yeah, I think you can write in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
actually, yeah, I think so in REPL. Yeah,
The shell.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So now if you want to exit out of this, you can either do quit like that. So that should exit you out. But if, and then another thing that you can do is say exit. Let me do this real quick. So exit, and then that also gets you out of it. So either quit or exit gets you out of that shell. Okay, so now we'll get back to this.
I have a question. So when you print with the underscore, I know it prints anything that was on the other line, but could you do it for an integer? Because I tried it for an integer and it gave me an error.
What did you try with the integer?
So I said, I wrote 8 and then it printed 8 again. And then when I did print parentheses underscore, it just gave me an error after it.
Okay, so one thing that you guys should always remember is, for round, make sure that, so it will obviously round only floats, so it can't really round to decimal, but if your printing isn't working, try using the str that we learned last class to cast it. If that printing is not working, that could be why you're getting the error.
Okay.
So now I'll go back to this. So we learned all about numbers, how to multiply numbers, how to use powers, how to divide and all that. So now I'll create another variable. So now this is just considered a Boolean type. So Boolean types, basically Boolean, I'll type it right out here. So this is true or false. So this variable is happy can only have two different values, is happy, or it can basically evaluate to true or false. Yes, true does have to be capitalized in this case. So in Python, you want true and you want false. So the first letter is capitalized.
For me, the text is happy is in italics and it's orange.
Sorry, what?
For me, when I'm typing in is happy, it's not white, it's orange and it's italicized.
I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it shouldn't. You shouldn't have any problems with that. Another thing is you have a character. I'll just say character here, and then this can be to a single letter. So these are just two other types that you can use in Python. We'll get into more. We'll use these types a lot more in the future once we get into more complex stuff. But for now, these are just types that I'm introducing to you so you know exactly what they mean. So any other questions before we move on? Okay.
What do we do? What do we use the character for?
So yeah, so for now, you just need to know that a character, you can use these as single characters. So you can have variables that represent just a single character rather than a whole word or a sentence. And actually even right now, we'll see more about how characters are relevant, but you can basically use it to edit strings and go through strings and find out exactly what you want. Yeah, so I'll do a quick review again at the end.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do we compile in Python? Like, what is the code for compiling?
So if you have Python installed, you should be able to do like Python
CD
3 class 2.py like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'll go into more about strings. So I'll create another variable, string here. So I'll comment this out for now. Actually, before we get into that, so I'll just say I have another string called introduction. I'll say, hi, my name is Shivam. So now, if I want to have this string represent, like, let's say it's a paragraph about me, and I want it to represent, I have different lines in my paragraph. So one thing that I can do is use this command \n and then say, welcome to my Python program, and I can just print out introduction. And you see that I have, hi, my name is Shivam and welcome to my Python program is on a new line. So this \n is a special character sort of kind of as a thing that you can use to append whatever is after this \n to the next line. So Python is able to understand that when I have this / character in front of this n, it will get me to a new line. And there's multiple different ones. There's \t to tab one space, but this is like most commonly used to go to a new line.
Excuse me.
And we'll learn more about how / is used to identify different characters. So for example, if another way that you can define a string is string, I can say this is equal to my name. So you can, so with strings, it can either be a double quote or a single quote in Python. But sometimes you don't want to do a single quote, because if I have a single quote and I have a word like this, doesn't, you see that this is like a contraction. So if I were to close this off, I get this big red line, basically telling me that Python doesn't like what I'm writing right now. So I see a question about println and print. So println is just strictly for Java. If you were in the Java class yesterday. So print is what we use in Python to print out different strings.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What would happen if you want to type in like a / and then some other thing like \n like normally, but you don't want a new line? Is there any way to get around the \n to create a new line?
Yeah. So let me check that real quick. So basically, so I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what, there's a character that you can use to basically omit whatever this \n does. I'll look at this after class and I can answer that question. But going back to this, if you have a contraction in a string, it would be better to use your these double quotes so that Python is able to understand that it's a contraction rather than the ending string with this character. And what another thing that you can do is that if you really insist on using these single quotes for any reason, you can use this \, again, and that basically says, okay, I want to ignore this, and then Python is able to understand that this is a contraction. Okay, that should be good for now.
I'm having problems with the /n.
Make sure you're using the \/ and not the slash. So, for
Okay.
example, this is a slash, that's a \.
Okay.
Yeah, so as I was saying, yeah, you can just do a double quote if you don't want to do all that \/ stuff. Double quote works completely fine too.
Wait, in my Python, I did the /n, and for some reason, it doesn't work.
So as I was just saying, make sure you're using the \. So there's two different types of slashes on your keyboard. You have that slash like that, and then you have the \/ like that. So make sure it's this one. Okay, so now going into more with strings. So if you guys were here for the Java lesson yesterday, you saw my demonstration about indexes in Java. So we have a word like this, string, and I want to be able to identify different letters in my string. So one thing that I can do is say that S would represent the 0 index, T would represent the 1, R would represent 3, I 4, all the way like that. So counting in Python, when you're thinking about the index, meaning where these letters are located in the string, the 0, it always starts at 0. So, and then my last one will be whatever the total length is -1, which is what I was kind of saying yesterday. So in Java, the way to get the total length of a string, I can say len of S. If I can print that out, you see I get 6 because the length of this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But the indexes start counting from 0. So it goes 0 to 5. So now,
excuse me, I have a question.
Yeah.
So how is it different in Java when you're trying to find the index?
So were you at the Java class yesterday?
I believe so, but I don't remember.
Okay, so I'm not going to review Java during the Python class right now. So right now we'll just learn about how to do it in
I think
Python.
it was index of str, or no, or length. Just
so we'll review that at another time during the Python classes. So right now we'll just focus on Python.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a new string, I can say I want to go from 0, or I'll say 0 to 2. So what this basically does is saying I want to, so these square brackets is basically how you can represent getting certain characters or certain parts of a string. So this would get me from the 0 index to the second index. So now if I print out, we get st. So it's similar here. So where 0 is where I can first start. So I'll start on my S and it'll go all the way up until I reach index 2. So in this case, it's R. So I'll only print out S and T for me. So, and that's what you saw in the output over here. And it won't include this last index that I specify. And another thing that, so in Python, you have all of these different indexes here. So we start from 0, we go to 5. And in so what we can do here is now you can also access them through negative indexes. So G, since it's the last letter of my string, I can access it through -1. N can be accessed through -2, and so on, all the way to -3, -4. You can do it, but mainly you use it for like the last couple of characters, so that you're able to access the end. In case it's like a really long string, I have a bunch of characters here. I want to access that last one.
So when would you like apply this to real life when you're like creating something? Like what would this be used for?
So that's actually, yeah, that's a good question. So this is actually a quick example from what I'm doing in school right now. So in school, I have, for example, I have a whole document. I have a string. It has all these different characters. I have like class is equal to this. I have all these different things, let's say, and I just want to get, I'll put this in here. Let's say I just want to be able to get this part of the string. So that's sometimes I can access like, I can access like certain parts of it. Or if I know, for example, that string is at, is at the end, I can use like the negative indexes to access all my strings towards the end if I know the length of it and stuff like that. So we'll learn more about applications of these concepts in the future. But for now, I'm just trying to teach you guys everything so you're able to have all these tools.
Okay. Thank you.
So as I was saying with the negative indexes, so the way I can get the last letter is I can say S -1. I can say print out last letter. And that will give me G. So you can do the same thing, -2, print it out, and so -2 is the second to last one, and that's how you can use negative index. And
wait, why do you have negative?
So negative, as I was just saying, represents from the back. So if I do -1, it'll give me the last letter. If I do -2, it will give me the second to last letter. If I do 0, then it'll give me the first letter.
Got it.
So another
excuse me, I
thing
have a
that you
question.
can do is, sorry, does someone have a question?
Oh, yes, I had a question.
Yeah.
So whenever you're trying to find the index, do you have to define each number for each letter and the correspondence?
So no, so this is all automatically done. So here, this was just a comment that I'm kind of showing you guys through demonstration. But all of this, once I create S is equal to string, Python automatically does all of this for me, where it says, okay, I already know S is the 0 index, G is the -1 index, all that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want to do the last couple of letters, one thing that you can do is, for example, go with, we'll do like this, -3. So in, you see is what gets, so -3 would represent the I in this case, and it goes all the way up until -1, which is G. So in this case, you see like, I have -1, that's like the last index for negative. So how do I get that G as well? If I completely remove that second line, and I just include -3 colon, then Python knows that it will take every letter from the -3rd index all the way up until the end, until it reaches the end of the string. So if I were to just print out, I'll say last charts. And you see I get the full ing. Same thing applies to normal indexes. So if I were to remove that first part, it will say, okay, I'll start from the beginning and I'll go all the way up until you specify whatever that is. And I can say full str is equal to S. So this is not really used, obviously, because you can just use the normal, but I print str, and I get the full string like that. So it's basically, I'll print out everything from the beginning all the way to the end. So these are just different ways that you can access parts of string. Another good example of why this could be useful is if I have a string and I just want to get my name. So I can say name is equal to, and I can count it out -1. So I can say that my name is equal to from -7. And then you see I get my full name there, Shivam. So a couple of problems that I see when people first start using this is, for example, they want to say S0 is equal to J, for example, something like that. So what this is basically you're trying to say is saying, I want to get the first letter from S, which in this case is S, and I want to change that to a J. So if I try this, Python gives me this ugly error, type error, which is basically saying you can't really change a string like this. We'll go into more about string manipulation in the future, but you can't really change a string accessing its index like that.
Wait, I have a question. So I'm on Sublime Text, and the equal signs are just showing up white. Is that an error?
Should not be an error. If everything's working, compiling, then you shouldn't have a problem with that.
Okay.
So I'll say I'll take a random letter. So let's say I don't really know, for example, what my string is or how long it is. And I say I want to get S and I'll get the 42nd index like that. So this will also give me an error in BC, and it says string index out of range. So index out of range is a pretty common error just whenever you're coding or making a program in general, which is basically saying I can't find this 42nd index in my string S, and that's because it just does not exist. This string only goes up to about like the 12th or 13th index. I can count it out. But with this sort of thing that we created here, if I say random letter is equal to S like this, and I print out random letter, so I'll comment this out for now. So actually that was a good example. So here what happened was I did nothing. So I emptied this. So I'm saying start at the beginning and then go all the way until 42. So there is no index that exists at index 42, but it still just printed out my entire string. But for example, if I were to try starting from index 42 and say go all the way to the end, then nothing gets printed out right here, as you can see, because it doesn't know what this 42 means. But with this sort of string splicing that you're doing with this colon, it won't cause an error because Python is able to handle that and understand that it was just wrong. So yeah, the same thing applies with negative indexes going from the back. If it doesn't exist, then it won't. It will just, the same concepts apply, yeah. So I'll remove this again. I'll comment these out for now.
How do you, what do you press on the keyboard to comment out everything?
You can do command slash or control slash, depending if you're on Windows or Mac.
Okay.
So
and then
/
when you just highlight the part you want to comment, what do you press?
Yeah, so if I highlight it like that, and I'm pressing command slash on Mac, and then comments.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So we have S is equal to string. So now if I want to create another string, then I can say this is equal to another string. And I say S plus equals this another str. So this is just another way of adding strings to each other. So yeah, so I can do a review at the end. I see a lot of questions like that. So I'll just review all these concepts quickly at the end. But what this basically is doing is I can use these adding tools to add strings to each other. And I can clear this. Oh, print S. And you see I have string, another string like that. Because what this did was take my original string right here and then add another str, which is like this. And then I included a space here, so it's a little cleaner in the output. You see the space is included as well. And it just added this to the end. So that's another way that you can add different strings together. So if it says string -9 is an error, that means that the -9th index just does not exist on that string. So like, for example, this one would go -3, -4, -5, -6. So that's why this one didn't, for this example, it doesn't contain 9 characters. So there's no -9th index. So one more thing that we can do is say I have s dot index of str. Yeah. So this printed out 0. So you see, I have what I did with this sort of with this function is I says I want to take my string s that I defined all the way up here, and then I manipulate it over here, adding another string. So here you can see the new value of s. And then I want to find where this is located in my string. So str is located at 2 places, string str over here and str over here. So if I were to ever call this method index, it is to find where a certain phrase or letter is inside my string. And then it will only print out the first occurrence of that. So if I have str in 2 different places, it will only print out the first one here. So for example, going back to the original one that we had where I said Shivam like that, and then I want to print index of Shivam, then you see I get 7. So that shows me where this is starting. So that's easier to find out where exactly different words are in my strings if I have complicated strings. So there's a lot we did with strings there. We'll definitely revisit them in the future. This is just a quick basic on how you can find certain parts of strings, how you can access different parts, how you can manipulate them, add to them, remove from them, all that. So I'll move on to one last concept for today if there are no other questions. Okay. So one more thing that we haven't really looked at yet was, so I'm able to do all of this. I can print out I can print out indexes, I can print out strings, I can print out math, I can do like A divided by B like that, but I haven't been able to take any user input. So one thing that I can do is I can say name is equal to input of hi, my name is like that. Print name afterwards. So when I run this in Python, then it says hi, my name is, and it stopped. So there's nothing executing, or the program is still executing right now. So it will wait for my input, and I'll say my name is Shivam, and it'll print out Shivam like that. So, and then I can do this again with age. I can say input, enter your age. And then I can print out, hi, hello, name, are like that. You are 19 years old like that. So as you guys can see, I inputted a number like that. And Python was still able to understand that I have a number here without actually having to cast this like str. That's how we've been doing it before. But in this case, when I'm taking an input from the user, it will always be a string because it thinks of me just typing text like that. So this can be anything, this can be anything, and it'll just print out exactly like that. But in the future, once we learn, we'll go into more about user input. We'll learn about how to make sure that the user is printing out a number rather than a word, or printing out a word rather than a number, to ensure that we get the proper user input. So you can see this in websites. When you go to a website and you're signing up, let's see, they make you input your email. So it's a similar sort of thing like that. They make you input your name, they make you input your date of birth, and they have all these checks to make sure that they're valid inputs. So right now, this is just a quick introduction on how we can get user input, but we'll see on how to actually keep it to the specific type that you would like. Any questions, Kent? Yeah, so if statements, so that's something that we'll get into hopefully next week. All of that we'll learn about how to judge whether the inputs are valid. So I'm getting another question about how I run it. So what I do is I just use Python 3 as my command, and then my file name class2.py, and then I run it using this command. So if you're having issues with it, just stay after class and I can try to help you, or message me on Slack if you don't have time after class.
Wait, but just one thing. You have to type in commands like CD documents and stuff, right?
Yeah, so all of that is on the tutorial online. I kind of walked through that. But if you still have further questions, don't worry, you can still ask me on Slack or wherever. So one other neat thing that I didn't go through with strings is I can say s times equals 3, and I want to print s. So what this basically did is it took my original string like this and then printed it 3 times in a row. This can be pretty useful if you need to, for example, multiply strings for some reason. It all depends on the situation, but these are just neat tools that you can use. Yeah, and then if you want to make it a little bit cleaner, see, I can add space. Oops. And then you have string, string, string like that. So now we have about 10 minutes left. So I'll just do a quick review on everything that we covered today, just in case there are some people who didn't completely understand some concepts. So if you 100% understand everything and you feel comfortable with all this, feel free to go. We will. So someone's saying to show the bottom. I'll go through all the code soon. But yeah, so feel free to go if you feel comfortable with all this. We'll post the homework on the tinyURL link right here. I'll send it one more time to the chat. We'll post the homework there. And yeah, thanks. So again, I'll go back to the top. We have, we did simple variable naming. So using underscores would be the best way to name variables. So it's a lot clearer on exactly what your variables mean. And then we have, we assign different variables here. We use multiply equal to multiply those. And remember that the double multiplication, when I do that, I'm able to do power. So 5 to the power of 2 and 2 to the power of 7. And then you see 25, 128 like that. So, and then we'll go to division. So we have, I reassigned A to 10 and 3. Then we learned 3 different types of division. So we have 3.333. So when I do A divided by B, then I have the double division sign, floor division, which basically will just give me that value, the whole number value that is without referencing the remainder. And then I can use the modulus to get a remainder of 1 and just print that out to the screen, as you can see with that one right there. So then we did a quick example here on if I were to go out for dinner with some of my friends. I had a price here of 100.5, and then I created a tax variable. And then I multiplied those to get the tax price, added the tax price to the original price, and printed out that. And then I was able to use this round function to round my price to 2 decimal places. So someone's asking again, what's the percent thingy? So this is called the modulus symbol. So if I have any problem like this, so if I have 10 divided by 3, I get a remainder of 1. And then if I have a problem like 30 divided by 6, I'll have a remainder of 0. If I have, so just simple math like that, and it'll just print out whatever the remainder is. So if I'll change these to 30 and 6, and I do A modulus, I'll get 0 as my output because there's no remainder in this. Yeah, so this was just a good example. Then we learned quickly what exactly a Boolean is. It's basically just true or false values, and then a character, which represents a single character. So for example, here, one thing that you can do is say I have a character. Actually, I'll go further into that right after I go through this. So here we learned about what \n does. This basically allows me to go to a new line. whenever I'm running this program, I can quickly show that one more time. This can allow for simple paragraphs that you have in strings and stuff like that. And then we learned that you can also have single characters, but then that doesn't handle well for contraction. So if I have a contraction, I can either use the backslash to omit that, or I can just use the double quotes, which would be the easiest. And then we learn more about indexes. So you have an index like this. We have a string here, then have different indexes. Index counting always starts from 0, but from the back it starts from -1. And then we were able to multiply strings like that. So I'll show all of this now. So one thing I forgot to mention is if I have a string like this, we have str. So this space is counted as an index. So I'll just count up to here. So the counting would be like that. So you always want to make sure that your spaces in your strings also get counted for the index. And then once we go through here, so we learned exactly what len does. Len is basically getting the length of my total string here. So in this case, I'll count it all out. So we have 13 indexes here, but len will always start counting from 1. So it'll be 14 is what the output should be. So we get 14 there. And sometimes, so if you, for example, if you don't want to use the negative indexes, you can say, I want a last index is equal to len of s -1. Then last letter is equal to s of last index. And then that can give me the last letter as well. So you just take the total length -1. And if you're confused about exactly why it's length -1, just remember that length, when it counts, it starts from 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but your indexes always start from 0. So the last one is the length -1. So this is just one more thing. Then we learn different ways. So this means I start from the beginning all the way up until the second index, but not including the second index. So this will just print st. And then this is going from the -3rd index. So I'll just remove this again. It will go from the -3rd index all the way to the end. And then this includes the entire string. So I'll print those out. And you see I get ing and then string. Okay. And so make sure that when you guys are using these, you don't want to be assigning them to anything. So you can only use it to kind of get value. You can't really send or change its value by any way. So if you want to change the first index, you can't use this because this is invalid and Python will throw you a nasty error. This also is not valid because you're trying to get an index that doesn't exist. As you can see, this index, this is only like 6 letters and you're trying to access the 42nd index, so that doesn't exist as well. And adding strings is what we learned. If you're in the Python class or the Java class, we did something similar yesterday, but you can use the plus equals to add to the end of a string.
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
What are the colons for before and after the numbers?
So this is basically saying, this line, for example, is basically saying I want to go from the 0th index to the 2nd index. I can also say I want to go from the 2nd index to the 4th index, 5th index, 6th index, as long as these indexes exist. But as I demonstrated earlier, also, if I have, for example, like 500, it will just go from 2 to the end of my word, and it will kind of ignore these 5, this whatever you specify here. Yes, we learned what index does with str, and then I can say print. I'll do all this one more time. And then I printed 0 again. Remember, it will only print the first occurrence that it sees and where that starts. So if I were to just get rid of this, I'll just make this ing, and I still have str in my string because I'm adding it over here. Then it'll give me 12 because 12 is where this str begins. And then lastly, we quickly learned about input, what you can do with input. So if you can assign these to a variable. So one thing I didn't show was if you have input like that, it's still going to make you input. It's still going to make you input, but it won't really assign it to anything. So now name. So if you see I have this hello, name, age, it's going to throw me an error. Name is not defined because I didn't name that anywhere. So you want to make sure that you're assigning it to a variable so that you can access it later. And now I run it, and then I say it gets simple input like that. So yeah, so that's all the time that we'll have for today. I'll stay back if there are any questions about anything with your Python setup. And also feel free to message me on Slack if you have any questions about the homework, and we'll post the homework for this week later tonight. So make sure to check that out. Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming.
Bye. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I have a question, 2 questions actually.
Yeah.
My first question is, so when you do for Mac, it's command / right to comment everything.
Yeah. So yeah, if you still see my screen, yeah, command /
Yeah.
is like.
So when I do that, I kind of run across this problem where I do like command / and then it like, but it double slashes the stuff that I already had commented before.
Oh yeah. So yeah,
So
that's the main problem with using that. But
is there any way to fix that, or do I just need to highlight everything manually?
yeah, that honestly the way would be to manually do it. There's no really way to like understand. Yeah.
All right. And then the other question I had was, it's not like a urgent thing, but every once in a while when I'm saving my files on Sublime Text, I get like a notification saying, thanks for trying out Sublime Text. And it says it's like, this is an unregistered evaluation version, although the trial was untimed, et cetera, et cetera. So will that be a problem? Or
no, so I don't have I haven't bought Sublime Text or anything, and I've been using it for like multiple years, so it shouldn't be a problem. Just honestly cancel whenever that pop-up comes, and you should be able
so it just keeps on giving you that.
Yeah, it honestly just keeps giving me that too.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On the like just setting up, because if I have actually 2 questions actually.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're on Sublime Text and you're like typing in Python, how do you make it like show up on terminal?
Okay, yeah. So have you been able to check out the tutorial located here?
Yeah, I did. I read it. But the thing is, when I need to save my file, so I press File, Save As, like whatever I name it, .py, and then I press Save, it'll say unable to save. Error.
In Sublime Text?
It says, yeah, read - only file system.
Read - only. Okay, so have you been using Save As?
Yeah.
And then when you save it like that, for example, I'll just go into
like no matter what I do, it'll like even if I don't save it as a .py, it'll still say that. But I am saving it as a .py and it's still saying that.
Okay. So yeah, that'll be something that I'll have to work with you. So are you on Slack?
No, I am not.
Okay, yeah. So join that Slack.
Yeah, today's
and
like
then,
my first.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. So the tiny URL link, the Slack link to join should be there. So what you can do is after we're done with this session today, just shoot me a message on Slack with a screenshot of your error and what that exactly is, and I'll work through it with you so we can get that fixed.
Okay, also my second question. So let's say I type something like A equals 30, then I type print brackets A, right?
Yeah.
Then I go into terminal. How would I get it to appear on terminal?
So yeah, so once you have your file saved and everything, so I think that's the main issue with your Sublime Text right now. For some
So I
reason,
need
I'm
to
not
have it.
exactly sure.
So I need to have it saved before I can pop up on Terminal.
Terminal, yeah. So the way that I do it is, so in Terminal, you see that I have right now it's saved on my desktop. So on the tutorial I showed, you can use these commands called cd and ls. So for example, so I'll just do this real quick. So I can use ls, and that will list out the current everything that's currently on my directory. So for example, I want to go into my desktop, right? So I can use cd desktop, and that'll basically navigate me into my desktop where all my files are saved. Now I have a bunch of stuff here that are I have, but what you can do is, now that I know that it's in this directory, I can say Python class2.py, and then I can run it. Oh,
yours says like, yours doesn't really show anything when you first log in, but like for me, when I go into Terminal, it'll say last login, and then it'll say my last login, like Tuesday, like April 20th.
Oh yeah, I have that too. I have that too.
And then it says the default interactive shell is now ZSH.
Yeah, so all of that you honestly just ignore, but all you need to know is how to navigate in with ls and cd. So wherever you are, so first thing ls, like that. So you can.
Yeah, and then it shows me applications, documents, library, music, public, desktop, downloads, movies, and pictures.
Yeah, so do you know, so once you know where it's exactly saved, so for me, I save it on my desktop. You can maybe save it in your documents, wherever is easiest for you, and you can navigate into that. So since I saved it in my desktop, I can say cd desktop, and then I'm able to run my file.
You saved your
Python file.py.
You saved your Sublime on your desktop.
Yeah, no, it's Sublime, the file that I'm running. So this one is class, it's hard to see, it's hard for you to see, but it's called class2.py up here, and I'm saving that. So so I'll walk you through this after. I'll answer any other questions there are right now. Any other questions before?
So like, you know how you have to like do cd for Java and like change directory and like do that stuff? Do you have to do the same for Python?
Yeah, so they'll be the same concept. So wherever you saved your Python file, as I was just kind of showing him, that's where you want to go into that directory where you save it using the cd and ls, and then you're able to run it using the Python 3 or Python command.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So Aaron, so yeah, if you can message me on Slack with your questions, I can work through that with you after class.
Yeah, I'll get Slack and do that. Anyways,
yeah.
So I should message you. What should I message you?
Just tell me show me a screenshot first of that read-only error that you're mentioning, and then also that's all you need, and then we'll work through it like that. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you guys for joining today. I'll see you guys next week.